What's going on? Welcome back. Thank you for clicking on this video. If you're new here, which most of y'all probably are, my name is Luke Frost. Today in this video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the 2022 rookie wide receivers and kind of their impact on fantasy football and the team surrounding them. Let's get into it. Now, first up, we got Mr. Drake London from USC, now on the Falcons. He was taken with the 8th pick in this year's NFL draft. You're not able to see really any of his measurables because he was hurt the second half of this year and through the NFL Combine, so we don't really have a good idea on that. But honestly, for his type of build, his type of player, not as important. He's a big-bodied, 6'4", 215-pound wide receiver. He had a breakout age around 18 years old that you can see is in the 99th percentile. And looking just at his college production, I mean, year over year, he just gets better and better. He was playing with people like Michael Pittman, Amon-Ra St. Brown. So he was around other NFL talent and still produced the same or outproduced them while being younger than both of them. And this last year, he was going to win the Blitnikoff Award, but he just got hurt with a foot fracture. I think he's going to be fine. And being picked at the 8th pick overall, that type of draft capital is going to guarantee you volume. I think he's going to come into 100 targets this first year. The one real issue with him is he's on the Atlanta Falcons. Marcus Mariota is their quarterback this year. I assume that they're going to invest into a quarterback next year. And what it is right now is him and Kyle Pitts. They're probably both going to get over at least 100 targets. So this is somebody that I love. I mean, it's hard not to looking at his profile. I mean, he's got that alpha wide receiver build and he's going to get the volume. I just finished my rookie draft 2 days ago. And he was the second player off the board behind, obviously, Breece Hall, who we'll talk about in a later video. That's right around where he's going to be going in any of these rookie drafts. Next up, we got Garrett Wilson, formerly of Ohio State, now part of the Jets. He was taken with the 10th pick in this last year's draft. Now, he doesn't have the most amazing production profile that you'll ever see, but there's always context behind that. So what is that? I mean, he doesn't have that early breakout age that a lot of people love to see. But he was playing at Ohio State. What do you want with him? He was playing with Terry McLaurin, Chris Olave, Jackson Smith and Jigba. I mean, just absolute studs. But if you watch him, I mean, you can just see that this guy is elite. He reminds me a little bit of like Calvin Ridley. I mean, I know that's saying a lot. Hopefully he doesn't act like him off the field, but he's someone who I love his tape. He also ran a 4.3 40, which is not honestly something I was expecting. I thought Olave would have been the faster one of them, but he got the higher draft capital. I think that was pretty much expected. He's coming out his junior year also, which is another check. I mean, this isn't the perfect landing spot for any wide receiver, but anyone that's being picked in the top 10, it's probably not going to be a great landing spot. I do think there is the possibility that Wilson keeps getting better. Zach Wilson, I mean, he keeps getting better, and that's going to improve the offense. They improved their offensive line this year. They already had Elijah Moore, who had some great weeks last year. They got Breece Hall. I mean, they have an improving offense. So getting paired with that, a young improving offense, not to mention, getting paired with an offense like that, along with his talent, I mean, it's tough not to really love him. He's someone who's just going to get open. He's a separator. And that's something that is hard to teach. And it's going to be, I think, also a huge benefit for Zach Wilson because he's going to be someone who can get wide open for him. Overall, I think this is a great landing spot. And I think that Garrett Wilson is going to be an absolute stud. With the next pick in the draft, the Saints moved up and took his teammate Chris Olave. He's coming out now after his senior year, and he's coming into a really different situation. He's coming in with Michael Thomas, who is coming off of basically not playing for the past 2 years, and Jameson Williams, who's coming off a torn ACL. So it's really tough to know exactly what that offense is going to look like. Who knows what Jameis looks like? Who knows what Michael Thomas looks like? I will say that the Saints seem to absolutely love Chris Olave. They traded up before the draft and then traded up again. I don't know the exact amount of picks, but it's some ridiculous amount of number for any position that's not a quarterback. I believe they're seeing Michael Thomas as a depreciating asset, so they're looking towards the future. Who's going to be that next alpha? While they play totally different roles, they're looking for that next alpha wide receiver. I don't really see Chris Olave as an alpha per se. It seems like the Saints do, given the draft capital they spent on him. I don't really see him as that. I see him more of as a field stretcher, kind of like a Tyler Lockett, if you can imagine that. Now, he doesn't have Russell Wilson to throw him the ball, but that's kind of the build that I see Chris Olave in. I think he'd be a great an unbelievable number 2 receiver. I saw him fall all the way to 109 in my rookie draft, which by the way was a 1 quarterback league, so it makes it a little bit different, but given the draft capital of the quarterbacks, I mean, how much different is it really, especially with the first round? Regardless, Chris Olave fell to the 109, which, even if you don't love him, is an unbelievable value given his draft capital. Next up, we got Mr. Jameson Williams, J-Mo. He was taken with the 12th pick by the Detroit Lions. They traded up from 32 to go up and get him. Great draft by them. Great move, honestly. He's coming off a torn ACL. We don't know for sure at the moment, but he's probably going to miss at least the first 4 to 6 weeks. This guy is an absolute burner. You can see he ran a 4.3 40. That's something that NFL teams value a lot more than fantasy people do. In my personal opinion, I think that he could be a lot more than that given his skill set. 6'1", 180, running that fast. I mean, the upside for him is endless in my opinion if he can recover correctly. And ACLs aren't what they used to be, so I think he's going to be fine, especially next year. I think he's going to have a great year. The Lions will probably invest in a new quarterback given that Goff's contract is up. So there's a ton of potential for him given his speed, his size, his draft capital, everything. I mean, he doesn't have all the production profile with the breakout age and everything, but he went to Ohio State and then transferred to Alabama. I mean, 2 of the just best wide receiver cores. So that's the context behind it is, you're not going to have that breakout age when you're playing next to Calvin Ridley, Jerry Jeudy, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, all those people. I mean, they're just a bunch of first-round talent at wide receivers. But yeah, absolute stud. Love him. Love this pick for the Lions. Going to be really interesting to see. Now Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be probably the number 2 receiver if I had to guess once he's fully healthy. I think that probably fits a little bit better as to what he does. And yeah, just really good for the Lions. I've got TJ Hawkinson, DeAndre Swift, Penei Sewell, really improving offense. They just got to get that quarterback, and they could actually be really interesting, especially for fantasy. Now, this is where things started to get really interesting. The Commanders took Johann Dotson with the 16th pick in the draft. Don't get me wrong, Dotson is a good receiver, but the 16th pick in the draft over Treylon Burks and Christian Watson and all of those people, I don't know. Maybe I didn't watch enough tape on him, but I didn't really see that. I mean, he didn't break out at Penn State till he was over 20 years old, and he's in the 90th percentile for college dominator rating and the 95th percentile for college target share. But I mean, he's already 22 years old. He ran in the mid 4.4s. He just doesn't have that alpha potential that everyone else around this area does. I mean, Treylon Burks was taken after him. We'll talk about him next. You're going to tell me that Johann Dotson has a higher potential than Treylon Burks? Especially compared to Terry McLaurin. I mean, is he supposed to be the field stretcher for Terry McLaurin? I mean, unless you're going to convert Terry into what he was drafted as a field stretcher, but he's obviously shown that he's way more than that. And who's throwing him the ball? Carson Wentz? I mean, but I liked him as a player, which is kind of a bummer why he got picked this high because he's not being valued where he should be. In my opinion, I could be wrong. These NFL teams obviously know way more than I do. So he still needs to be looked at, obviously, and he's going to be taken in the back end of the first round, beginning of the second round of your rookie drafts, where he should be given his draft capital. But given the landing spot and what I think his skill set is, I just don't see this working out or being at least worth the 16th pick in the draft. Now, moving on to said Treylon Burks, big boy out of Arkansas, now part of the Titans. This was a wild, not the pick wasn't wild, but just what happened. The Tennessee Titans ended up trading A.J. Brown to get this pick, where they ended up taking Treylon Burks, who, if you've watched him, I mean, he doesn't completely remind me of A.J. Brown. They have a similar build. They play a little bit differently, but they're both definitely aiming to do the same thing. And if you see Mike Vrabel right after he made that trade, he was pissed off. But I love Treylon Burks. I mean, I don't think he's going to be A.J. Brown, but I don't think you can really expect anyone to be A.J. Brown when they're coming out. Besides that, though, Treylon Burks, 6'2", 225 pounds, just an absolutely elite college dominator, elite college target share. But he was playing Arkansas, where you kind of expect that because they don't have much else going on there. People always also made these completely unreal expectations for him coming out or going into the NFL Combine. People wanted him to run a 4.35 at 6'2", 225 pounds. Yeah, okay, he still ran a 4.55. He's in the 86th percentile for his speed score. I mean, he's still a absolute freak athletically, especially for the size that he's at. And he's probably going to be using a very similar role as A.J. Brown, you know, getting those short slants, trying to make stuff happen after the catch. And I think he's going to thrive in that role. And in an offense that is already proven to be good, proven that they can use someone like this effectively, I mean, great landing spot for him. He was taken with the third pick in my rookie draft, which is exactly where I think he'd be going. It's probably going to be him or Drake London. I've seen some Garrett Wilson, but I'm more of the Drake London, Treylon Burks camp. But I mean, those are all absolute studs. Now let's talk a little bit about A.J. Brown to the Eagles, since this is where it happened. I think you have to downgrade A.J. Brown a little bit. I mean, he's playing now with Devonta Smith, so he's playing with a better wide receiver than he's ever played with. I mean, I guess he was with Julio Jones last year, but that wasn't Julio Jones. Let's be real now. But he's going from Ryan Tannehill to Jalen Hurts, who you can argue who's a better quarterback. But the real issue between Jalen Hurts and Ryan Tannehill is obviously the rushing, and not so much between the 20s, but when they get into the red zone. There are so many times last year where, I mean, I felt like Jalen Hurts was terrible the entire game. And then the last 2 quarters, he would get 2 rushing touchdowns and save his day. And that's going to take away from A.J. Brown scoring touchdowns, which is what he does. I mean, he can take a slant 70 yards to the house, but you can't rely on that. You can't predict that. I mean, it'll probably happen, but trying to rely on that week over week is just, that's a recipe for failure. I think you have to downgrade him because of that touchdown percentage that they're going to be seeing. Now, Jalen Hurts might take that step forward and become an elite passer, but I don't see that happening. That doesn't tend to happen. So I think AJ is still probably a top 12, top 10 wide receiver, but I don't think he's that top 8 with a top 5 potential that he used to be, which is a bummer because I have him on my dynasty team and I really want him to stay like that, but it is what it is. Moving on, let's also talk about Marquise Brown, the trade that happened between the Ravens and the Cardinals. So Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, gets sent from the Ravens to the Cardinals. So a couple things here. One, Mark Andrews is going to be in that conversation for tight end 1 again, and it's him or Travis Kelce. Kind of pick your poison there. It's going to be absolute studs either way. I'll probably go with Kelce just based off of the track record. Patrick Mahomes versus Lamar Jackson, but that's a conversation for another day. The other thing, which we didn't know at the time, was DeAndre Hopkins getting suspended for 6 games. That's really interesting because obviously Hollywood's going to be the number 1 wide receiver for now in that first 6 weeks. And I don't know about you guys, but I tend to really value the beginning of the season over the end of the season, because trying to predict what's going to happen with these players week 15 is kind of ridiculous. You know that there's going to be some younger players who will probably not start doing good until then. But a lot of times in my drafts, I'll try to focus on the beginning and then figure it out from there. It kind of makes me think that I'm really going to be liking Hollywood Brown, depending on where he's going, obviously. But he's going to be the alpha wide receiver. Alpha is also weird to say for someone built like him. But he is going to be the alpha wide receiver there, getting the highest targets. You know, Kyler's really good at those deep passes. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, kind of taking over that Christian Kirk role, but getting way higher target percentage because Hopkins won't be there. We have seen Kyler struggle without Hop, so I'm a little bit worried about that. But regardless, it's going to be great for Hollywood the beginning of the year. Still will definitely be a part of the offense once Hop is back, but from there on out, who knows? Okay, moving on to Christian Watson out of North Dakota State, now a part of the Packers. A lot of people thought that he would have been picked at the end of the first round with the Packers being there and the Chiefs being there, but wasn't taken there. But then the Packers ended up trading up in the beginning of day 2 to go get him, which makes a lot of sense. To be completely honest, I did not know much about this guy before the NFL draft process. I mean, I heard a little bit about him with Trey Lance because I'm a Niners fan, so I had heard about him a little bit. But after the combine, I mean, what a freak! 6'4", 210 pounds, a 4.36 40, 98th percentile speed score, 95th percentile burst score. I mean, just an absolute athletic freak. He doesn't have the production profile, obviously, that we want to see, but I mean, he does at least have a good college dominator rating and pretty solid yards per reception in college. So there's a lot of stuff we see there. It's just the production just isn't what we want to see. But coming from a place like North Dakota State, I mean, it's really hard to check all those boxes. And obviously the Packers need a wide receiver like this because they traded away Davante Adams and did not sign anyone else in the offseason, at least not yet. Now, Packers, they love their big body wide receivers, their Jordy Nelsons, Davante Adams, all those guys, those big bodies, they love him. So makes sense why they took him. But Rodgers doesn't really have the history with the rookie wide receivers. So that's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But he has had success with second-round wide receivers. Jordy Nelson, Davante Adams, both second-round wide receivers. So I think this is going to be a really interesting case to see play out. This athletic freak, but doesn't have the production. He was taken in the second round, but Rodgers doesn't like the rookie wide receivers, but doesn't really have another option. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. He's somebody that I mean, it's hard not to love this dude, this type of athleticism with this type of landing spot. I mean, not much else you could really ask for. Is awesome. The next pick in the draft was Wandel Robinson out of Kentucky. He was taken the 11th pick in the second round. With the rumors of Kadarius Toney wanting to get traded, it makes sense why they want to take a wide receiver, but I feel like they have so many other holes, which, I mean, the beginning of their draft with Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal, beautiful. I mean, that was just great. But Wandel Robinson, I mean, a lot of people saying they want him to be the Kadarius Toney replacement, but I mean, I wasn't a huge Kadarius Toney fan coming out, but I find that honestly disrespectful if you look at their profiles. And he's 5'8", 178 pounds. I mean, he does have an elite breakout age and elite college target share, but that's just not enough. And when you're playing at Kentucky, I kind of expect those things if you're going to be an NFL talent. Kadarius Toney, on the other hand, 5'11", 193 pounds, a 4.4 340, 97th percentile burst score, in the mid 60 percentile for speed and agility score. I mean, just bigger, faster, stronger. And if you watch Kadarius Toney play, especially in the NFL, that game where he had almost 200 yards with Daniel Jones throwing him the ball, I mean, nobody could touch him after the catch. It was unreal. So I find it a little bit insulting. As you can probably tell, I'm not a huge fan of Wandel Robinson. I thought he was taken way too high here, but I could be wrong. So who knows? We'll find out. But me personally, not somebody I'm really interested in. I mean, if he falls to you late in your rookie draft, go ahead and take him because he has the draft capital, but not a prospect I'm really interested in. Okay, I'm going to skip over a few other picks like John Mechie, Tyquan Thornton. I mean, neither of them I'm super in love with. I didn't love the prospect. The last person I really want to touch on is Skye Moore out of Western Michigan, who got drafted by the Chiefs. I mean, just insane production his last year in college. A crazy athlete, solid 40 time, obviously, especially with his size and speed. I was honestly surprised at those other receivers. Just watching his tape, seeing his college dominator, seeing his college target share, along with his, he's 190 pounds, 5'10". He's got solid size. I mean, that's pretty solid. And when you get second round draft capital and you're part of the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes without Tyreek Hill, I mean, how can you not love this guy? He's going to get dropped in right away to one of the best offenses in the NFL, along with an opportunity to get legitimate targets right away. He doesn't affect too much of the offense. I mean, he's not taking anything away from Travis Kelce. I think Juju and Skye will split what Tyreek was doing, but obviously they're not going to fill in for what he was doing. I mean, he's Tyreek Hill. There's nobody that can do what he does. But Skye will get opportunity in that offense, which makes him valuable right away. All right, well, thank you guys for watching. I hope you learned a little bit. I hope it was interesting. Let me know if you got any questions, anything you want to run by me. I'll catch you in the next one.